Hey everybody, this is my sister's MR2. This is not a turbo, naturally aspirated. So instead of rebuilding a little 4-cylinder or putting a turbo in it because she's a little scared of the car, we are putting in 200 horsepower. This is out of a 2000 Lexus RX 300. This is the variable valve timing one. A lot of people have done this swap. This is the first one for me. So I'm going to take you through it, what I had to do to make things work. Thank you to Woods over somewhere in the UK. He did all the wiring for me, provided me with the mount there, the correctly modified flywheel. And honestly, before you even put it in the comments, I can't tell you what he did. I'm not sure myself. If you want it done, have him do it. He'll do it right for you. But that being said, all the mounts on this engine and transmission setup, because it is using that transmission, most of the mounts, all three of them, are actually on the transmission. So the only mount you need on this is that little guy right there. One of the only other modifications I made to this engine, outside of just cleaning it up, is, as you can see there in the bright gold, this is the original fuel rail. And you can see my beautiful welding job. It's not easy to weld, in my opinion, cast aluminum, especially when you have two different kinds. But I cut the fuel pressure regulator off of the 4-cylinder engine and cut the end off of the 6-cylinder engine, welded the two together, then put it all together with some extra injectors I had that I zip tied to it, put colored dye in it, and I pressured it up to 100 PSI to make sure that I didn't have any pinholes anywhere. It took a couple of tries, but I did finally get it so that it doesn't have any pinholes and it holds 100 PSI. Way more than these rails are ever gonna need to hold, but I figured better safe than sorry, especially when you're dealing with fuel. So far, that is the only modification that I've made other than adding this mounting bracket to it. It has a power steering belt on it, but I don't think I need it because I'm pretty sure her car does not have power steering. There was none on the engine I took out. That pretty much leads me to believe that there's none on it. Wood did great on the modification to the harness to get everything to work right. I'll make you aware of anything I had to do while I'm doing it. As you can see, this is the underneath of the vehicle. I have a Max Jack by Danmar mini lift in my garage. This is about as high as it goes, which I'd say is good enough to, you know, roll around on a cart with. I did this by dropping the engine out of the bottom with the trans attached to it. It just gives me a little bit more room to do what I need to do. As you can see, it's pretty dirty in here. I'm probably gonna clean it up first because I'm all about things looking good. Plus, this is not gonna be a daily driver. This is gonna be our fun car. As I go along, I'm hoping this is all going to be just bolt here, bolt there, bolt here, bolt there. Not too much modification until I get to the exhaust system. I am using the factory exhaust off of a Camry. I think it was a 93 Camry. I'm not using the exhaust off of the Lexus because this was an all-wheel drive Lexus. And this exhaust is much cleaner. Now, again, I know out there are people, oh yeah, well, you run, equal length headers and you're right. And I agree with you completely on that. The only thing is, this is for my sister. This is not gonna see any track days. This is just gonna be a fun car. So getting that extra horsepower out of this was not necessary. No TRD superchargers or anything like that. It's just basically an upgrade instead of putting a 4-cylinder back in, which I thought was idiotic. Unless, of course, it's a turbo. That's a completely different story. But a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder would have worked for some. I like the idea of doing something a little bit wilder. Stay tuned. Keep watching. You'll get to see all the different things I do to get this engine into this car. Okay, first thing I noticed, I've got the engine under the car. Want to put the transmission on. Again, most gearheads out there know this, but for the guy that doesn't do this every day, just a good tidbit of information. You have alignment pins. There's one here and one that goes in here. You'll notice this one's gone. These are very important for alignment because you're trying to get the center shaft of your transmission to line up with the center of this. Being that it probably got stuck in the transmission and is long gone, I went out to the other motor, grabbed this one, and I will put this one in place. And because it's a wonderful Toyota part, it fits. If it fits, it ships. So you want to make sure that your alignment pins are in before you put your transmission up. It makes putting it on a lot easier, but it also aligns everything up so that all your bolt holes line up perfectly. The other thing that I like to do is I'll take a little dielectric grease and I put just a little bit on the splines here, just to make it a lot easier to slide in instead of having to fight it a little bit with the splines on the transmission itself. That's my first tip. Hopefully there won't be too many. Well, I've already had the transmission up about 3 times now. This one lines up perfectly. This one lines up perfectly. This one, however, right below the pin, turns out it lines up perfectly with the hole right here, with that one right below the clutch fork engagement. The problem is it's got no threads in it. So I, of course, want to have the most bolts that I can holding this in place. What I did is I took a drill using, it is a 13, let's see here, pretty sure, I can't find it on there, it kind of spun a little bit. 13/64, if I remember right, is the exact size I used, so that I could tap it out to what all the rest of them are, which is 12 millimeters by 1.25. That's the thread pitch that's on this one over here that you use. I wanted to have it down here too. The only difference is there's not as much meat as you'd see on the one that's below it as the one right here. So what I'm going to do is I took an old head stud that was the correct thread, created a stud, and tapped it for a nut. So I'm going to use that as a stud to hold everything in place. That way it can go as far in as it needs to. It'll help me line up the transmission, but I don't have to worry about going in too far and hitting the back of the block and either cracking off the edge here, down here. I can actually get it to the point where it's nice in. I'll put a little lock thread on it so that hopefully it doesn't back out. Might make changing the clutch a little bit harder, but I think the benefits of not breaking the block here and here outweigh the annoyance of when you go to change a clutch. Besides, she's got a brand new clutch, flywheel's been ground. Hopefully there won't be any issues with that. Okay, as you see, got the engine hooked up to the engine hoist like this. Unfortunately, the engine was not going to go in from underneath. It came out just fine, but you're dealing with an engine that's pretty small compared to the width of this one without taking across a couple other things off. I don't think I can do it. So what I'm going to do is lower the car down, raise the engine up, I've already got the deck lid off. I'm going to take the trunk off to make sure that if anything happens, I'm fixing body, not a lot more than I need to. Hopefully it won't, but you never know. That will be the next thing, and then I will try to lower it from the top. Next quick suggestion, pull the rear O2 sensor off. Might help get this bad puppy down in there. If you have a hoist set up that allows you to twist the motor this way and that way, it would be really recommended, because I could see where that would be very helpful right now. I, of course, don't have one, so I will make do. Hopefully nothing bad happens. Now, the next thing I might have to do is take off the air conditioning and the alternator and put them on after it's in the car, because I can see where they're going to be tight. So I think I'll do that. I'd rather fidget it with it in from underneath than to screw up something above. Whew, what a butt kicker. Looks like the third time I try to put it in is the charm. Having the ability to tilt the engine very sharply down on the transmission side is very important to clear the welded on engine mount bracket that's over there. This side is pretty clear once you remove your throttle control, your cruise control. and anything else that's on this side. And it literally is no joke. I had to use a jack and a piece of wood to raise the engine up on the passenger side to get it low enough on the driver's side to clear that mount. But I have done it. I've got a nut on. The other thing, I do it so you don't have to. You need to remove your exhaust. It would have been great if I was able to get it in with the exhaust on. Unfortunately, that's a no-go. You will never clear the opening. Take off your hood, your deck lid latch or hood latch, depending on where you are. Get it as clean as possible in there to get this beast down in there, but it will fit. I was starting to question it even myself. Now all I have to do to hold it in place is put this mount back on, lower the engine down a little bit, then I'll put that mount back on, and then the rear, and then the front. And the engine will be in, and then it's just a matter of bolting a lot of stuff up. Now that we've got it sitting down in about where it's gonna be, I've got the rear mount attached with one bolt. I don't have the front mount on yet, but I do have the transmission mount there on, and the engine mount up there. I did have to elongate the holes a little bit to make it fit on the new mount, but that could have been my body, not a problem with the actual mount system I got from Woodsport. And we're talking, wasn't off by very much. I probably didn't even need to modify it a little bit, but I did anyway. All right, so the next issue that I ran into with doing this engine swap is on this engine, once you get the axles put in, you can see there's a little bit of aluminum on the block. Hopefully this is coming through on the camera. That is awful close to this outside edge of your CV shafts. That being the case, what I'm going to do is pop this CV shaft back out, and I'm going to use a Dremel. Not really a Dremel, it's more of a die grinder. It's larger, but you could use a Dremel if you need to. Just shave this edge where it gets close to here off of the block. That way it'll have a nice smooth area and transition to work around. And then the next thing I'm going to do is move over to this side once that's all taken care of, and I know that that's nice and smooth, and look into figuring out the alternator, the AC compressor, and then the exhaust all the way around. That's the next step, but first I'm going to go ahead and just grind off that little bit of the outside ear. I mean, it doesn't need much. It's not actually touching. Under stress and load from like hard takeoffs, I just want to make sure it doesn't nick that little section. And to take off maybe an eighth isn't going to hurt anything. So that's what I'm going to do. Everything else seems to be going smoothly. It is a slightly tight fit, but not nearly as tight as I thought it would be. So after getting everything mounted up, we'll work on getting the exhaust down and over and attached into the muffler system. Okay, here's a better shot of it with the axle moved out of the way. You've just got an area just right up in here that gets kind of close. So I'm just gonna be kind of putting a chamfered edge on this section right here. Once I do that, I'll show you that, and then we'll move on. Now, this kind of goes without saying, but make sure that whenever you grind anywhere where you have an open hole to the engine or transmission, that you make sure you got something in it to protect any of those shavings from getting in there. As you'll see here, I just basically ground it down. The tool I used is a bit like that. It's designed with an open flute pattern so that it cleans itself and doesn't get all clogged up. Made short work of it. Just cleaned it up just a hair more so that I just had a little bit more distance before putting that on. And the other thing I noticed is that we don't really have a way to bolt the bottom here and here to the bottom of the transmission. Now again, originally the transmission only had a plate going across here, so I don't know if it really needs the support. But what I might do, just because I can, is take a little piece of aluminum and just basically drill the hole through here, and then I'll tack on a piece of aluminum on here, drill through that, and then maybe just put a bolt there for just my own benefit. But again, I don't think it needs it because this originally was just a metal plate. But anyway, so I'm gonna put this back in, and get on putting the alternator and the air conditioning pump back on it. Unfortunately, to get this bad puppy in here, all of that stuff had to come off. The alternator and the AC, because this car will have AC, up into place. And then I was going to use the original Camry exhaust that I had, but unfortunately, it's really close to this, and I don't want the heat burning the boots. What I'm gonna do is I'm using the Camry exhaust on the back. I cut the pipe off there, and then I'm using the Lexus here. And what I'm gonna do is TIG weld on some stainless steel pipe, same with over there. I'm gonna bring this one around, and then around again, and then I'll have a 2-into-1 here to go to the muffler. So if she ever wants to get like a performance aftermarket muffler or something like that, it'll bolt up factory. But basically I'm gonna have to make some exhaust pieces. But for right now, I wanted to show you how I'm solving the air conditioning problem. These lines were never designed for that compressor. Trust me, I tried. What I'm gonna do is, this is the low side line, and then on the car, this one right here is also the low side line. I confirmed that by following the lines all the way to the front and making sure that this is the low side. So what I'm doing is, I knew this side was the low side because it's got the cap on it. I made sure to cut that far back just to make sure I knew exactly and didn't get confused in case the project took longer and forgot. I'm gonna be bringing this line down to here and then attaching it here to this line. Now, how I'm gonna be doing that, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can take some, like a 90-degree hose and then clamp it here and clamp it there, but that's a potential leak. So what I'm doing, because I have the tools to do it, sorry, I got a new cat at the shop. His name's Cooper. He got a little ear damage. He's a lap cat. What I'm doing is I took a piece of just ingot aluminum. I don't even know what the size is. I have just a box full of them. And I put it in the milling machine, milled a flat edge here so it'll be easier to weld, and then drilled here and drilled there. Now, obviously, it goes all the way through. Nice little piece, but what it will allow me to do is once it's slid on here, I can TIG weld that together and then take this line off and TIG weld that together. So I have a nice block to attach the Lexus lines to the MR2's lines. And then I'll do the same for the other line. I just haven't figured out where I want to do my attachment points. This will be out of the way, so I might do it over here in the corner. This line turns pretty quickly into a flexible hose. I'll show you that when I figure that one out. But for right now, we're gonna go ahead and take this all together, take this line off, cut the sheeting back some, and then just do a nice little bead all the way around, or at least I hope to be a nice bead, and then I'll pressure check it. Hey, Coop. All right, with the air conditioning, I ended up doing a simple, I cut this line and attached it to the line that was already here, and then clamped the end down. So basically, this line that came down, attached right there, clamped it on to the aluminum line that was right here, a ring fitting, and then into the original one. Now, as you can see, this one is not as pretty. I've been fighting it, trying to get it just right. I'm most likely going to end up taking it back off, making a new end for it, because I think I've tried too many times to get it completely leak-free. The other option would be just to have a line made. Don't think I'm gonna bother with that. This one actually has such a very small leak that the air conditioning system seems to be actually holding very well. We have our mount system here. If you look on there, this is what I used. It was a brake fitting to attach the fuel. It seems to be working very well. There's no leaks. I haven't really had any other issues. The clutch has taken quite a few times to get all the air out of it. It seems to be working quite well. The car is completed now, so To finish up, I'll show you what I ended up doing with a lot of stuff. So on the rear exhaust, I ended up having to cut and make a flange so that it could come across, and it becomes 2 into 1. Flexible pipe, and then the original muffler, which actually sounds really good. It kind of gives it almost a Ferrari-esque sound. Flex pipe there, because again, when you have solid mounted exhaust here, solid mounted exhaust here, there has to be some flex somewhere. The heat shields that worked out to protect the boots are on there. As it pertains to the connections and all that for the original transmission, everything worked out just fine. Runs really well. There were a couple of connectors that you can see that I siliconed off to protect them, but they don't get used anymore because they were for the original style engine. The fuel system was very easy to adapt to the new one. Let's go up top. This is what it looks like up top now. Got this from the same gentleman that we got the wiring harness from. It's a really nice setup. Mass airflow goes down in here. Only couple of things that I have to do is hook up PCV system. This is what I did for the hoses. Just a couple of hose lines that went in here and here for your heater. Over there, I needed that to be the highest point, so I went online, got just a regular fillet, added the flex aluminum line that goes all the way down to its connection point down there. The one over here, actually I was able to reuse this one that you see down in here. I was able to reuse that from the original engine, which made it nice. As for the electrical, everything either goes through here and over here on the back of the firewall into the trunk. I had to cut a new bulkhead. I didn't know where it would be, so I ended up having to do it after the engine was in. So I did it through here. The new ECU and stuff like that kind of bulges the carpet out. I might end up making a fiberglass cover plate for that. That is yet to be determined. Right now, she's just enjoying driving it. The only other issue I think that the vehicle's having is the alternator seems to make a lot of noise when I first started up. I've tightened the belt a couple of times, so I don't think it's the belt. I think it might be the actual alternator is causing too much of a heavy load. Everything else went very smoothly. It was connecting some simple vacuum lines up here and there, and everything worked really well. Let's go ahead and lower it down and see what she sounds like. And that's what she sounds like. So like I said, I've got to do a little bit more tuning to it. Not so much tuning, but just fine tuning. If you have any questions about what I did to put this in, please feel free to leave any comments. Also hit that like and subscribe button, please. I would very much appreciate it. If you've appreciated what you've seen here, show it by hitting that like and subscribe. Thanks, and have a wonderful day, and enjoy your car.